Sisera's advance was no more. His reign was over. Barak then comes to Jael's tent. Verse 22 says that as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to him and said to him, "Come, I will show you the man whom you seek." And when he went out into her tent, there lay Sisera dead with the peg in his temple. Deborah had told him earlier that if you want me to be there and you want me to go with you, that'll be fine. But what she told him was that the glory for the victory would go to a woman. The glory for the victory would go for a woman. Now then, Barak is realizing that the woman of that prophecy was Jael, the wife of Heber. It was the end of the line for Sisera. And it was the beginning of the end for King Jabin, chapter 4 and verses 23 and 24. So on that day, God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, in the presence of the children of Israel. And the hand of the children of Israel grew stronger and stronger against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed Jabin, king of Canaan. And Israel, the Bible will tell us in chapter 5 and in verse 31, had rest in the land, this time for 40 years. And so we've talked about it the last couple of Sunday evenings, the cycle that just keeps repeating itself. Israel is being pursued. They cry out to the Lord. He sends a deliverer to them in the form of a judge. There's peace on the land for a period of time. But then when that judge or that deliverer dies, they return to their evil ways. So for a few minutes, and as we come to a close in thinking about this evening, let's notice some of the characters in the story for just a moment. Barak. We might refer to him as a reluctant warrior. He's a warrior who vacillated between cowardice and bravery. And it seems as though that the cowardice was perhaps overbearing and overshadowing to his bravery. He was brave as long as he knew Deborah was behind him, but he didn't want to attack on his own. He needed somebody to help. As long as you'll go with me, I'll go. But if you won't go, then I will not go. That's Barak. Then here comes Jael. She's the wife of a nomad who happened to be at the right place at the right time with the right idea. Now you think about that. I can't think of anybody here who, if you're being pursued, would think about putting somebody to sleep and driving a tent peg into their temple. But that's what she did. She had the right idea, and when she did, she became the assassin of an assassin. But let's think about Deborah. Deborah in this story, to me, is an interesting individual, an interesting character. She's been referred to as one of the most admired women in the Bible. And when you think about Deborah and you think about her judgeship and you think about the leadership that she gave to the Israelites, we can understand that. But again, as you come to think about the cowardice of Barak, who would not go out to fight Israel's enemy, Sisera, unless Deborah went with him, she was instrumental in winning a major victory for the nation of Israel. So Deborah is an interesting individual. Perhaps it would cause us to wonder something like this. Why would a woman be placed in such an instrumental position? Whenever we know and we understand that God has always looked upon male leadership in the spiritual way for his people, why would Deborah be placed in a position like that? A position that was normally reserved for male leadership. And it maybe would cause us to wonder. Such a role was definitely uncharacteristic of women during that time. Not to mention the fact that Deborah was also a wife and a mother. And so here she is. She's the leader. She was a prophetess through whom God spoke to meet the needs of his people. And if you get right down to it, I really think the truth is that she took the role of judge because there was no man who would assume the responsibility of being leader and protector. No man would do it. So here comes Deborah. Yes, God put her in that position, but he put her in that position because there was nobody else that would at that time take the responsibility. And perhaps Deborah's leadership and her need to push men into battle is a graphic reminder of how the men had sunk in the neglect of their responsibilities. So Deborah is an interesting character in this story. But their victory on this occasion, and we dare not miss this, their victory on this occasion was actually the Lord's victory. Notice again, verse 15. The Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army with the edge of the sword before Barak. Verse 23, on that day God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, in the presence of the children of Israel. It wasn't because of the might of Barak's army. It wasn't because of the ingenuity, I guess you could say, of Deborah. It was because of the strength of the Lord that Israel had victory over the Canaanites in this particular situation. It wasn't a victory they could brag about. It was a victory that they had to recognize as being theirs because of God. And what an amazing lesson that can be for you and for me, to recognize that whenever something good happens in our lives, the glory ought to go to God. The glory belongs to God. He's the one to whom we should always give thanks for his help in our lives to subdue the efforts of Satan against us. Satan's going to always do everything that he can to try to disrupt us, to trip us up, to put a barrier in front of us. But whenever we're able to get over that barrier or get around that barrier and keep from tripping and keep from being what Satan wants us to be, perhaps we should recognize the strength of God in our lives and give him the glory. Give God the appreciation and the gratitude and the thanksgiving. The glory belongs to God. Israel realized that. Barak needed to understand that. Yes, it was at the hand of a woman that the Canaanites were subdued in this particular situation. But the story helps us to realize that it was all because of God. That God, and Deborah understood that. You need to understand that God is the one who's going to help us to get through this situation. Barak learned it, and he realized that it wasn't because of his strength, but it was because of God. And what an amazing story that can be. Perhaps you need to answer the invitation of Christ this evening. We always offer that invitation. If we can assist you in any way, let's stand and sing.
Out of my bondage, sorrow, and night, Jesus I come, Jesus I come, into thy freedom, gladness, and might. Jesus I come to thee. Out of my sickness into thy health, out of my want and into thy will, out of my sin and into thyself, Jesus I come to thee. Out of my shameful failure and loss, Jesus I come, Jesus I come, into the glorious gain of thy cross. Jesus I come to thee. Out of her sorrows into thy balm, out of life's storms and into thy calm. stress to jubilant song. Jesus, I come to thee, out of the fear and dread of the tomb. Jesus, I come, Jesus, I come, into the joy and light of thy home. Jesus, I come to thee, out of the depths of ruin untold, into the peace of thy sheltering fold. Ever thy glorious face to behold. Jesus, I come to thee. If there are those that were not able to partake of the Lord's Supper this morning, if you'll pass through the doors in the back of the auditorium and turn to the left, there'll be someone there to serve you. Singing of this song, if you would do that, song number 705. Following this song, we'll have our closing prayer. 705. We'll sing this through twice. A common love for each other, a common gift to the Savior, a common love, Holy Ghost to the Lord, a common stream, bring weary, a common hope, for tomorrow, common joy, in
in those areas.